The sound of the slap shattered the silence inside the luxurious cabin. Blood began to trickle from Dr. Amara Vale's split lip as she sat motionless at cruising altitude over the Atlantic. "Don't you dare talk back to me!" The flight attendant, Sarah Vance, snarled, her hand still trembling with self-righteous rage. "People like you need to learn your place." The first-class passengers froze. Phones emerged from designer bags. The assault was captured from every angle. But what Sarah Vance did not know, as she stood there breathing hard, was that the elegant black woman she had just humiliated did not merely own the seat she was sitting in. She owned the entire plane. Dr. Amara Vale touched her bleeding lip, then calmly adjusted the small platinum pin on the lapel of her jacket, the insignia of Sterling Aviation. She glanced at her diamond-encrusted watch, a custom piece engraved with the year Sterling Aviation reached $2 billion in revenue, and smiled faintly. Have you ever witnessed the moment a predator realizes it has just attacked the apex predator? Dr. Amara Vale had boarded her own aircraft without fanfare. She had not announced herself. She had simply walked to seat 1A, the seat she herself had designed when she commissioned this $65 million Gulfstream. The irony was exquisite. The CEO of Sterling Aviation flying anonymously on a Sterling Aviation flight. But today Sarah Vance was working first class. "Excuse me, ma'am." Sarah's voice cut through the luxurious silence. "I need to see your boarding pass again." Amara handed over the platinum document without looking up from her quarterly reports. Revenue had risen 23% this quarter. The stock price was at historic highs. Sarah studied the boarding pass like a forensic examiner. "This seat is reserved exclusively for our executive platinum members." "I understand," Amara replied evenly. Sarah's voice sharpened. "Because these seats cost thousands of dollars each way. They are meant for business owners, corporate leaders, people who actually earn their place here." The executive in 2A stopped mid-sip of champagne. The marketing director in 3B froze with her magazine halfway to her face. The corporate attorney in 1C began recording silently. "I'd like to see some identification," Sarah continued, "and a credit card that matches." Amara produced her license and her Centurion Black Card, reserved for clients who spend $500,000 or more annually. Sarah barely glanced at them. "Anyone can get one of these, ma'am. I'm going to need you to move to economy class, where you belong." "Where I belong?" Amara's voice remained soft as silk. "I don't understand." Sarah leaned closer, her whisper carrying through the cabin. "I don't know how you obtained that boarding pass, but I know your type. You people always try to cheat the system." The phrase detonated through first class like a grenade. Champagne glasses trembled. Breaths caught audibly. Phones captured every syllable. Amara's fingers found the platinum pin on her lapel, the Sterling Aviation insignia, an inlaid diamond wing worth more than Sarah's annual salary. Sarah did not recognize it. "These seats are for people who contribute to society," Sarah continued, raising her voice for the cabin. "People who create jobs, build companies, generate real wealth. Not people who rely on affirmative action and handouts to steal what others have earned." The words struck like physical blows. Passenger after passenger pulled out phones. The scene was too explosive to ignore. "I'm going to count to 10, Sarah announced to the entire cabin. "If this woman does not move voluntarily, I will call security." Amara opened her briefcase. Inside was a single contract bearing the Sterling Aviation letterhead. She placed it face down on the tray table. Sarah's voice rang out. "I apologize to our legitimate first-class passengers for this disruption." Amara looked at her watch. The custom piece engraved with the year Sterling Aviation reached $2 billion in revenue. Sarah leaned in again. "This is exactly what's wrong with society. People who think they deserve what they haven't earned." Amara touched the contract. Her signature appeared on page 12, authorizing hundreds of millions in annual aircraft purchases. The cabin chief, Kevin Harlan, emerged from the galley. Sarah, what's going on? This woman is disrupting our first-class service. She refuses to move to economy. Kevin examined the boarding pass. Ma'am, please comply with crew instructions. I'm in my assigned seat. She's lying, Sarah spat. They always lie. They always play the race card. They always make everything about discrimination. The word discrimination exploded through the cabin like a bomb. Amara finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I never mentioned race, Sarah. Sarah's face twisted. It's implied. The attitude, the entitlement, the assumption that the rules don't apply to you. Air Marshal Marcus Hale appeared in the aisle, hand near his concealed weapon. Ma'am, step away from the passenger. Immediately. Sarah's eyes lit with vindication. Thank God you're here, Marshal. This woman has been increasingly hostile. I wasn't talking to you. Hale cut her off. I was talking to you. Step away. Sarah's mouth opened. But I'm the one who called you, and I'm looking at a passenger with blood on her face, and you standing over her with your fist still clenched. Sarah's fist was indeed still tight, knuckles white from the impact. The executive in 2A rose to his full height. Sarah, I've been watching the entire time. She showed you everything, answered every question, never raised her voice once. She was being evasive, Sarah insisted. She was being polite, the marketing director said, looking up from her phone. This already has tens of thousands of views. CNN just picked it up. Sarah felt the walls closing in. Passengers were turning against her. The air marshal was treating her like a criminal. Even Kevin was backing away. It was time to go nuclear. You want to know what really happened? Sarah's voice rose to a scream. This woman played the race card the moment I questioned her credentials. The cabin fell silent except for the hum of the engines. That's what they do, Sarah continued. They show fake documents, cry discrimination, and threaten lawsuits the second anyone questions them. Amara Vale finally spoke again, her voice soft but carrying to every corner of the cabin. I never mentioned race, Sarah. Sarah's face contorted. It's implied. The attitude, the entitlement, the assumption that rules don't apply to you. Air Marshal Hale reached for his handcuffs. Ma'am, you need to stop talking right now. But Sarah had crossed the threshold. Years of economic anxiety, social media echo chambers, and carefully cultivated resentment erupted like a pressure cooker. People like her are destroying this country, she screamed. They take jobs from qualified Americans through diversity quotas. They get rich off lawsuits and government handouts, while real Americans struggle. Every word was another federal charge. Every sentence was professional suicide. Broadcast live on social media. Probably got that credit card through affirmative action banking programs. Probably bought that suit with welfare money. Probably thinks society owes her reparations for something that happened 200 years ago. The racist tirade poured out like sewage from a broken pipe. Passengers recoiled in horror. Phones captured every syllable. Air Marshal Hale had heard enough. Sarah Mitchell, you are under arrest for assault on a federal aircraft. Sarah's world tilted. You can't arrest me. I'm the victim here. You are the perpetrator of a federal hate crime, Hale said coldly. Kevin Harlan stepped forward. Sarah, please stop talking. I'm going to call the union representative. Don't you dare defend her. Sarah pointed at Amara, as though she were radioactive. She's probably recording everything on her phone. She's probably planning to sue the airline for millions. Amara raised her hands, showing she held no phone. I'm not recording anything. Liar, Sarah screamed. You people always lie. You always manipulate. You always play the victim while destroying innocent lives. The words you people echoed through first class like an explosion. Haley snapped the cuffs onto Sarah's wrists. Sarah Mitchell, you are under federal arrest. As Hale read Sarah her rights, Amara Vale finally pulled out her phone. The cabin held its breath. She dialed a number. It rang once. This is Dr. Vale, she said quietly. We have a situation on flight SA0001. The voice that answered was clear, immediate, unmistakably different. Dr. Vale, yes, ma'am. How may Sterling Aviation assist you today? The words hit the cabin like a nuclear bomb. Sterling Aviation. The executive in 2A went white. Sterling Aviation. The marketing director's typing froze mid-tweet. Wait, Dr. Vale? Sterling Aviation? The corporate attorney's phone nearly slipped from his trembling hands. Oh my God. Air Marshal Hale felt his knees buckle. Sterling Aviation held $23 billion in federal security contracts. His paycheck came from their subsidiary companies. Cabin Chief Kevin Harlan looked as though he might vomit. Sterling Aviation owned Skylux Airlines. Sarah had just assaulted her own CEO. Dr. Amara Vale smiled into her phone. Send the legal team to Miami International and prepare a press conference. We're going to be making some changes. The phone call had shattered reality in first class. But Amara Vale was not finished dismantling Sarah Mitchell's world. She had only just begun. Yes, I'll wait for the legal team, Amara continued on the phone, her voice carrying the casual authority of someone who controlled $23 billion in assets. And connect me with the emergency board meeting of Skylux. The executive in 2A's hands shook as he frantically Googled. Holy! She's worth... Oh my God! The marketing director read aloud from her phone, voice rising with every word. The most powerful woman in aviation, according to Forbes, owned 73% of Skylux Airlines. Net worth $23 billion. The corporate attorney's camera captured every reaction as the truth detonated through the cabin. Not only does she fly first class, she owns first class, but Air Marshal Hale was experiencing his own private apocalypse. Sterling Aviation didn't just own airlines. They held $23 billion in federal security contracts. His training, his certification, his entire career had just threatened to arrest the woman who could end his federal employment with a single phone call. Cabin Chief Kevin Harlan felt his 8-year career collapsing in real time. Perfect service record. 2 commendations. Employee of the Month 6 times. All destroyed because Sarah Mitchell had assaulted her own CEO. Dr. Sterling, he stammered, voice barely audible. We didn't know you were traveling incognito today. Amara's eyes locked onto his like targeting lasers. Kevin Harlan, employee number 4291, hired March 15th, 2016. Current salary $67,000 plus benefits. Wife, Michelle. 2 children. Mortgage payment $2,470 monthly. Kevin's knees buckled. She knew everything. His personnel file, his personal details, his financial obligations. You're wondering how I know that? Amara's smile was terrifying in its precise calm. I personally review every personnel file in this company, all 1,517 employees across 47 countries, including yours. She turned to Sarah, still handcuffed and ranting, still completely oblivious to reality. Including yours, Sarah Mitchell. Employee ID 51847. Hired January 8th, 2019. Current salary $52,000. And 3 previous discrimination complaints that management buried to protect the company's reputation. Sarah's face twisted with rage and disbelief. You're lying. Those records are sealed. They're confidential. Nothing is confidential to the CEO who signs your paychecks, Amara said. She opened her briefcase fully. Inside were not just papers. There were photographs, digital devices, evidence that could destroy lives. Complaint number 1, she continued, voice steady. Marcus Chen, Detroit Metro, April 2021. You called him another fake businessman and demanded he prove his first-class ticket wasn't stolen. Settled for $5,000. Kevin's face went ghost white. Sarah, you never told me about that complaint. Complaint number 2, Amara continued. Rabbi David Goldstein, Chicago O'Hare, September 2022. You insisted his religious attire was suspicious and called security. Settlement, $6,000. Air Marshal Hale felt sick. There had been previous incidents. Complaint number 3, Amara said, voice dropping lower. Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, Phoenix Sky Harbor, March 2023. Purple Heart recipient, disabled veteran. You told her military welfare queens didn't belong in first class. Settlement, $9,000. Each revelation struck the cabin like a physical blow. Witnesses recoiled in horror. Sarah Mitchell was not merely racist. She was a repeat offender. But Amara Vale had saved her most devastating revelation for last. Sarah, you keep asking how I could afford this seat. How someone like me could possibly belong in first class. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small digital recorder, still running. This device has been recording since you first approached my seat. Every word, every insult, every federal crime, broadcast live in high-quality audio to our legal department. Sarah's cuffed hands began to tremble. That's illegal surveillance. Actually, it's experimental security testing. Sterling Aviation holds federal security monitoring contracts on commercial aircraft. All passengers consented to monitoring when they boarded this plane. Amara tapped her tablet screen. Live video feeds from 6 different angles filled the display. 12 people in our Atlanta security center have been watching this incident in real time. Hale nearly collapsed. Everything had been recorded. Every moment since Sarah first questioned her credentials. Every discriminatory comment. Every escalation. Every assault. All captured with courtroom-quality footage. Amara rose slowly, blood still visible on her split lip, and delivered the final devastating blow. But here's what you really need to understand, Sarah. You didn't just assault a passenger today. You assaulted the woman who designed this aircraft. She pulled photographs from her briefcase. First photograph, technical blueprints bearing my signature. Those safety systems keeping us alive at 35,000 feet. My engineering. Second photograph, me in a laboratory surrounded by aircraft components. This cabin's pressurization system? My patent, filed in 2019. Third photograph, me shaking hands with Boeing executives. The turbulence monitoring that prevented 47 accidents last year? My innovation. Sarah stared at the evidence as though it were written in hieroglyphics. I didn't buy my way into first class, Sarah. I built first class. I designed these seats. I engineered this aircraft. I created the company that manufactured every component keeping you alive right now. Amara's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more authority than any shout. You see, Sarah, I'm exactly where I belong. In the seat I designed. On the aircraft I engineered. Wearing the uniform of the company I built from nothing. She gestured around the cabin. Every rivet, every wire, every safety system, products of my mind, my education, my innovation. The aircraft touched down with a gentle bump. Through the windows, they could see the welcome committee. FBI agents in tactical vests, Sterling Aviation executives in black SUVs, CNN crews with satellite trucks. Now, Amara Vale said, her smile cold as liquid nitrogen. You're going to face the consequences of assaulting a federal contractor on a commercial aircraft. Sarah Mitchell finally understood the magnitude of her mistake. She had not merely slapped a passenger. She had declared war on a billionaire. She had assaulted the woman who could destroy her life with a single phone call. She had committed a federal hate crime against someone with the resources to ensure she faced every possible consequence. Captain Ramirez's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Miami International Airport. Ground personnel are standing by to assist passengers. Ground personnel, federal agents, Sterling Aviation's legal team, and enough media to make Sarah Mitchell the most infamous flight attendant in American history. Amara Vale touched her swollen lip one final time, then straightened her blood-stained jacket. Sarah, she said quietly, you wanted to know if I belong here? She gestured toward the terminal, where dozens of law enforcement officers waited. Let's find out where you belong. The aircraft door opened like the mouth of hell itself. FBI agent Rebecca Torres boarded, her federal credentials catching the cabin light like a sharpened blade. Behind her came a small army of justice, 3 additional agents, Sterling Aviation's general counsel, a forensic photographer, and 2 executives, whose faces had gone the color of ash. Dr. Vale, Agent Torres's voice carried the weight of federal authority. You need medical attention. Amara touched her split lip, now crusted with dried blood. The assault was captured on 6 recording devices and witnessed by 12 passengers. I believe that constitutes sufficient evidence. Sarah Mitchell, still handcuffed to her seat, watched as her victim was treated like visiting royalty. The cognitive dissonance was shredding her mind. Agent Torres! Sarah's voice cracked with desperation. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. This woman was being hostile and disruptive. Agent Torres turned slowly, her gaze sweeping over Sarah like a predator assessing prey. Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell, 34 years old, employed by Skylux Airlines for 5 years. 3 previous discrimination complaints. $2,000 in settled claims. Sarah's world tilted sideways. How do you know that? Those were confidential. Nothing is confidential during a federal hate crime investigation. The interrogation room smelled of industrial disinfectant and shattered dreams. Sarah sat across from Agent Torres, her court-appointed lawyer, and Sterling Aviation's general counsel, a woman whose single briefcase cost more than Sarah's annual salary. Let's review the evidence chronologically, said General Counsel Patricia Blackwood, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. The tablet screen came alive with Sarah's own voice. You people don't belong here. Sarah flinched as though she had been slapped. That's not what I meant. Timestamp 2:31 p.m., Blackwood continued. The recording kept playing. I know your type. You people always try to cheat the system. Sarah's lawyer closed his eyes in defeat. Court-appointed counsel could not fix this level of stupidity. Timestamp 2:47 p.m. People like her are destroying this country, taking jobs from qualified Americans through diversity quotas. Every word was another nail in Sarah's coffin, hammered in by her own voice. And timestamp 2:52 p.m. The tablet showed high-definition video from multiple angles. The slap in slow motion. Brutal. Blood spraying across Amara's lip. The savage satisfaction on Sarah's face. That is aggravated assault on a federal aircraft, Ms. Mitchell, against a government contractor, with enhancements for a hate crime. Agent Torres leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more threat than any shout. You're looking at between 8 and 12 years in federal prison. Sarah's bladder nearly released. 8 years, plus civil liability for life. Dr. Sterling's legal team is seeking $23 billion in damages. While Sarah faced the federal meat grinder, Amara Vale orchestrated her corporate execution from 35,000 feet aboard her private Gulfstream. The video conference screen showed 12 terrified faces. The entire Skylux Airlines board, hastily assembled from 3 continents. Ladies and gentlemen, Amara began, voice calm despite the medical tape covering her split lip. Let me explain exactly how badly you have all failed. The profanity hit the board like a physical blow. Dr. Vale never cursed, never lost composure. The fact that she was abandoning professional courtesy meant someone was about to die professionally. Board Chairman Robert Hayes stammered, Dr. Vale, we want to express our deepest— Robert, shut up and listen. Her voice could have frozen liquid nitrogen. This is no longer about Sarah Mitchell. This is about you. All of you. She opened a file that made grown executives cry. 4 years of systematic discrimination documentation. 47 verified incidents. $87 million in buried settlements. And a corporate culture that had treated racial hatred as standard operating procedure. Chief Operating Officer Linda Martinez tried to intervene. We met all federal compliance requirements. You met the bare legal minimum while operating a machine of systematic oppression, Amara said, smile terrifying. And now you are all personally liable under federal hate crime conspiracy statutes. The word struck the video conference like a nuclear bomb. Personal liability meant homes, savings, children's college funds were at risk. CEO Michael Thompson had never looked more like a condemned man. The woman sitting across from his $60,000 mahogany desk controlled his company's survival with a single signature. Michael, you personally received discrimination complaints about Sarah Mitchell in 2021, 2022, and 2023. Amara placed 3 files on his desk, like tarot cards predicting doom. You buried all of them to protect stock prices. Thompson's hands shook as he reached for his blood pressure medication. We settled those matters per legal counsel. You allowed a racist employee to continue assaulting passengers because lawsuits were cheaper than firing her. The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. Amara placed a document that made Thompson's vision blur. Federal conspiracy charges for systematic civil rights violations. Minimum sentence 5 years. Maximum 25. Are you arresting me? His voice came out as a squeak. I'm giving you a chance to avoid federal prison, Amara said. She placed 2 contracts on Thompson's desk as though dealing cards. Option 1. Complete corporate restructuring within 30 days. Immediate resignation. New CEO with diversity expertise. $100 million allocated to passenger compensation fund. All Skylux employees must complete mandatory bias training. Anonymous reporting system with external investigation. And you personally donate $5 million to civil rights organizations. Thompson scanned the terms, each line more devastating than the last. Option 2. I release these files to federal prosecutors. Skylux faces charges for systematic civil rights violations. You face personal conspiracy charges. Sterling Aviation terminates our $847 million annual contract. Your stock price collapses to zero. Your executives face criminal liability. Your personal assets are seized under federal forfeiture laws. Thompson's vision tunneled. My personal assets? Your Hamptons house, your yacht, your daughter's trust fund, your wife's jewelry collection. All seized as proceeds of criminal conspiracy. The words were a death sentence delivered in silk tones. Federal prosecutors are very creative when it comes to asset forfeiture, Michael. They once seized a man's shoelaces as evidence of criminal lifestyle. While Thompson signed his corporate death warrant, Amara simultaneously dismantled the discriminatory infrastructure of the entire American aviation industry. Her video conference now included CEOs of every major U.S. airline, all summoned when #SkyluxRacist reached 47 million global mentions. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Mitchell's assault represents the predictable outcome of the systematic discrimination all of you have permitted. The executives squirmed like insects under a magnifying glass. Sterling Aviation provides aircraft leasing, maintenance, and federal security services to 73% of major U.S. airlines. Total annual contracts, $23 billion. American Airlines CEO Jennifer Walsh spoke first, voice trembling. Dr. Vale, surely we can discuss. There is nothing to discuss. New diversity standards will be published within 48 hours. Implementation deadline, 60 days. Non-compliance results in immediate contract termination. Delta's CEO attempted diplomacy. Those deadlines seem aggressive. Systemic racism requires systemic solutions. Any airline that fails to comply will face immediate partnership termination and federal civil rights violation investigation. The threat was clear. Comply or face corporate extinction. As Miami's sunset painted the sky blood red, the total cost of 30 seconds of racist violence began to become clear. Sarah Mitchell, 8 to 12 years federal prison, $23 million in civil judgment, lifetime aviation employment ban. Michael Thompson, resignation in disgrace, $5 million personal fine, possible criminal charges. Skylux Airlines, $100 million in mandatory reforms. stock price collapse, corporate restructuring, aviation industry, 23 billion in threatened contract losses, mandatory bias training for 23 million employees, systematic monitoring programs. But Amara Vale had calculated the cost long before she boarded that aircraft. 30 seconds of humiliation to purchase systemic change that would protect millions of future passengers. The house was finished. The revolution had only just begun. Sarah Mitchell stood in chains before Judge Patricia Williams. Her orange jumpsuit made a stark contrast to the Skylux uniform that had once given her power over passengers' lives. The courtroom was packed. Victims of airline discrimination filled every seat. News cameras captured the moment when systematic racism finally faced justice. "Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell," Judge Williams's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "In 30 seconds of hatred, you committed 7 federal crimes and exposed a cancer that had infected American aviation for decades." Sarah's legs trembled. Her court-appointed lawyer steadied her elbow to keep her upright. 8 years in federal prison, 5 years supervised probation, 23 million in restitution to Dr. Vale, and permanent ban from the aviation industry. The gavel's crack echoed like a gunshot. But Judge Williams was not finished dispensing justice. "Furthermore, your case has revealed such widespread, systematic discrimination that this court orders federal oversight of all major airlines. No corporation will profit from racism while I am in charge." In the gallery, Dr. Amara Vale remained motionless, her face a mask of quiet satisfaction. Years of Sarah's life for 30 seconds of violence, the mathematics of justice. The boardroom massacre at Skylux had been swift and merciless. CEO Michael Thompson, fired, facing federal conspiracy charges. His $12 million severance package seized under civil forfeiture laws. COO Linda Martinez, fired, under FBI investigation for burying discrimination complaints. Her yacht sold to pay whistleblower settlements. Head of Human Resources Kevin Harlan, fired in disgrace, blacklisted from aviation employment. His children's college funds emptied to pay discrimination settlements. 12 executives fired in a single day. Their combined severance packages, $47 million, redirected to a passenger compensation fund. Dr. Maya Ellison, the new CEO, had watched the wreckage of the old regime with grim satisfaction. When you enable monsters, you become a monster. Today we killed the monster. Sterling Aviation's passenger protection system had transformed air travel in ways no one had anticipated. Flight 447, Chicago to Denver. Artificial intelligence detected bias indicators when flight attendant Jennifer Walsh showed subtle preference for white passengers during beverage service. Immediate supervisor intervention, mandatory retraining, completed mid-flight. Flight 821, Los Angeles to Miami. Anonymous passenger report flagged gate agent Marcus Johnson for dismissive treatment of elderly Hispanic travelers. Investigation initiated within minutes. Johnson terminated before the flight departed. Flight 203, New York to Atlanta. Real-time monitoring detected pilot Rebecca Martinez making announcements containing racial coding. Federal investigation opened. Pilot certification revoked. The system had processed 23 million flights and prevented approximately 1,000 discrimination incidents before they escalated to assaults. Sarah Mitchell's concrete cell was 8 feet by 6 feet of regret. 6 months of incarceration had given her infinite time to replay the moment that destroyed her life. "I still think about Dr. Sterling's face after I hit her," she told her court-assigned therapist, Dr. Janet Williams. She wasn't angry. She was sad, like she had expected it. Dr. Williams reviewed Sarah's file. Classic case of radicalization through economic anxiety and social media echo chambers. You said you were only doing your job, but your job was customer service, not racial profiling. Sarah's face crumpled. I thought I was protecting the airline, protecting the real customers from people who didn't belong. Now I know I was the one who didn't belong. 7.5 more years to understand how 30 seconds of hatred cost her everything. While creating justice for millions, Sterling's standards had metastasized across corporate America, not through legislation or lawsuits, but through simple economic pressure. Discrimination had become bad for business. Marcus Washington, 34, black software engineer. I flew first class last week for the first time since the Sterling incident. The flight attendant smiled at me. Actually smiled. I almost cried. Maria Rodriguez, 28, Latina marketing executive. My 8-year-old daughter asked me why I was nervous about flying. I realized I no longer had an answer. The fear is gone. David Chen, 41, Asian American. Physician, I used to brace myself every time I boarded a plane. Now, I just fly like a human being, like I belong. Senator Elizabeth Warren stood at the Capitol podium, voice heavy with historic change. The Amara-Vail Act ensures no federal contractor profits while enabling systematic discrimination. $23 billion in annual government contracts will now only support companies that uphold American values. The Act's provisions were revolutionary. Zero-tolerance discrimination policies for all federal contractors, mandatory bias monitoring technology, public transparency reporting, automatic contract termination for verified incidents, and personal liability for executives who enable discrimination. Within 30 days, 47,000 companies implemented Sterling standards to protect their federal contracts. Dr. Amara Vail stood before 3,000 aviation professionals at the National Safety Conference. Her voice was steady despite the magnitude of the change she had created. 6 months ago, I was slapped by a flight attendant who thought I didn't belong in first class. Today, 23 million passengers fly without fear because we proved systemic change is possible. The standing ovation lasted 7 minutes, but the real applause came from millions of Americans who now traveled with dignity, protected by systems born from one woman's refusal to accept humiliation as the price of being different. One single slap had changed everything. The revolution was complete. Dr. Amara Vail stood before 500 investors, her fingertips unconsciously tracing the faint scar on her lip, the mark where Sarah Mitchell's hatred had collided with her face. A year ago, she could have erased it with surgery. Instead, she wore it like a medal of honor. 1 year ago today, I was slapped by a flight attendant who thought I didn't belong in first class. Her voice carried through the silent auditorium. Today, I want to tell you what that slap accomplished. The room held its breath. It awakened an industry that had been sleepwalking through systematic discrimination for decades. It created accountability where none existed before. It transformed the way 23 million passengers experience air travel every single day. Her voice grew stronger, more passionate. Sarah Mitchell thought she could slap progress into silence. Instead, she awakened a revolution that crossed 47 countries and changed 500 million lives. In her cell somewhere, Sarah Mitchell sat writing in her court-assigned journal with a short pencil. Day 365. The anniversary of the stupidest 30 seconds of my life. I still think about Dr. Sterling's face after I hit her. She wasn't angry. She was sad, like she had expected it her whole life. The chaplain asked what I've learned this year. I learned that hatred is the most expensive emotion in the world. 30 seconds cost me 8 years of freedom, $23 million I will never have, and a career I will never recover. But it gave millions of people something I never thought they deserved. Dignity. 7.5 more years to think about that exchange. Sterling's standards had spread like wildfire across corporate America, not through legislation or lawsuits, but through simple economic pressure. Discrimination had become bad for business. Marcus Washington boarded his Atlanta to San Francisco flight, settling into seat 2A without a second thought. 6 months earlier, he would have braced for confrontation. Today, the flight attendant smiled genuinely and asked if he needed anything. "Just coffee, please. Thank you." He didn't realize he was smiling back until she walked away. In seat 4C, Maria Rodriguez helped her 8-year-old daughter with the seatbelt. "Mama, why are you crying?" "Because flying used to be scary for people who look like us, mija. But it isn't anymore." Dr. Amara Vale's memoir, The Sound of Change, had been on bestseller lists for 6 months. But it wasn't the sales numbers that mattered to her. It was the letters. "Dr. Vale, I am a 67-year-old black woman who stopped flying after being humiliated in 1987. I bought my first plane ticket in 35 years after reading your story. My son asked me why I was afraid to travel. After reading your book, I realized I no longer had an answer. Next month, we're taking our first family vacation. I used to accept discrimination as the price of being different. You taught me that the only price worth paying is the fight for dignity." That night, Dr. Amara Vale sat in her home office, preparing for her final interview of anniversary week. Tomorrow, she would appear on 60 television networks worldwide, reaching an estimated 400 million viewers. Her message would be simple. Change does not happen in boardrooms or courtrooms. It happens when ordinary people refuse to accept extraordinary injustice. She touched the scar one final time, remembering the moment everything changed. Sarah Mitchell thought she was putting me in my place. She would tell those 400 million viewers. She was right. My place was at the front of a movement she never saw coming. The revolution no longer belonged to her alone. It belonged to every passenger who refused to accept humiliation as the price of travel. To every employee who spoke instead of staying silent. To every witness who chose to document instead of ignore. It belonged to anyone who understood that silence enables monsters, but courage creates heroes. The question was never whether change was possible. The question was whether you would be part of it. You have witnessed injustice and stayed silent. You have seen discrimination and looked away. You have encountered prejudice and accepted it as normal. The camera is in your pocket. The voice is in your throat. The power is in your hands. What are you waiting for? The revolution is calling.